The ship Horizon Star landed on the surface of Vatrax Prime, a world known for its powerful warriors and strict honor codes. Joren, a young human from Earth, stepped out with the rest of the exploration team. He had never been so far from home before. He was a technician, not a soldier or a leader. His job was to fix machines and carry equipment, not to speak at meetings. But still, he was curious about this strange new world. Vatrax Prime looked harsh, but beautiful. Black mountains stretched across the sky. The air was dry and heavy. Giant statues stood around the landing site, each carved in the shape of a warrior holding a sword to the stars. Joren followed his group toward the Grand Hall, where the Vatrax Council waited to greet them. Inside the hall, fires burned in long, stone pits. The walls were covered with armor, weapons, and banners of battles won long ago. The room was full of strong Vatrax warriors wearing dark armor and sharp helmets. They stared as the humans entered. But no one spoke. Joren stood near, the back, quiet, and amazed. He noticed one large sword hanging on a stone frame at the center of the room. It was unlike any weapon he had ever seen. The metal looked alive, as if it shimmered in the firelight. Strange marks ran along the blade, and the hilt was wrapped in dark leather. While the leaders spoke, Joren's curiosity pulled him toward the sword. He stepped closer. He did not understand the warning signs or symbols written on the ground below it. His hand reached out. Before anyone could stop him, he grabbed the sword and lifted it. A heavy silence fell over the hall. Every Vatrax in the room stood at once. Some reached for their weapons. Joren froze. He looked around, confused. He felt the weight of the sword in his hands. It hummed slightly like it was alive. He quickly set it back down, but the damage was done. One voice rang out, full of anger. "You touched my father's blade." A tall Vatrax woman stepped forward. Her armor was deep red. Her hair was tied behind her head, and her eyes burned with fury. She pointed at Joren. "By sacred law, you have marked yourself as the one chosen by the sword. This is no simple weapon. It belonged to General Varn, my father. He died with honor in the Battle of Thorns. His blade has not been touched since. Only the worthy may lift it. You have broken custom. Now the bond must be fulfilled." Joren looked around for help, but no one moved. The human team leader stepped forward and tried to explain that it was a mistake, but the High Elder of the Vatrax Council raised his hand. "The law is clear. The one who draws the blade of Varn must bind with the bloodline. The bond must be sealed by union." The crowd began to murmur. Some Vatrax seemed shocked. Others nodded in agreement. Joren did not fully understand. He looked at the tall woman again. She stepped closer. Her voice was cold. "My name is Kayla, daughter of Varn. By our law, you must now become my mate. If you refuse, you will face the rite of Ash, a trial by combat. Do you still call yourself innocent, human?" Joren stepped back. "This is a mistake. I didn't know the law. I'm not trying to insult anyone. I was only curious." Kayla crossed her arms. "Curious or not, you touched what no other has touched in 5 cycles. The blade chose you. Now you face the choice. Accept the bond or prove your worth in the right." The human leader whispered to Joren. "We need to calm this. If we upset them, it could destroy the whole mission. Try to stay peaceful. We'll talk to the council." Joren nodded, though his hands were shaking. He had no training for this. He was just an explorer, not a warrior or a husband. He looked at Kayla. She stood proud, but her eyes were not just angry. They were also confused. She did not expect this either. The High Elder raised his voice again. "You have 3 days to make your choice. Bond with Kayla and honor our ways, or face the right and fight for your freedom. Until then, you are a guest under guard." Guards stepped forward, not with weapons drawn, but with firm eyes. Joren followed them out of the hall, his heart pounding. Behind him, Kayla stared at the sword. She said nothing. As the fires dimmed in the hall, whispers spread among the Vatracs. No human had ever touched the blade of Varn. No outsider had ever entered their customs so deeply. Some saw it as a sign. Others saw it as trouble. Kayla stood alone near her father's sword. She looked at the marks on the blade. They were the same symbols she had studied since childhood. She had dreamed that one day she would give the sword to a worthy warrior who earned it in battle, not a stranger from the stars. Not a human with soft hands and wide eyes. She clenched her fist. If he wants to wear the sword, he must prove he deserves it. Far away, deep in the mountains, other eyes were watching. Not all Vatracs wanted peace with humans. Some wanted the sword for themselves. And now the one who had touched it was marked. Kayla sat in her private chamber, her back straight, her jaw tight. The old sword rested on a stone table in front of her. The same sword her father had carried into battle. The same sword a stranger had lifted without knowing its weight or meaning. The image of that moment burned in her mind. She wanted to forget it, but she could not. The law of her people was clear. The one who touched the blade of Varn without permission must either fight or bond. There was no middle path. Kayla had never imagined this law would touch her own life. She had trained her whole life to be a warrior, not a bride, and certainly not to a human from Earth. Guards had placed Joran in the guest wing of the palace. He was not in chains, but he was not free to leave. 2 Vatrac soldiers stood outside his door. Inside, Joran paced back and forth. His mind raced. He had come to learn about alien cultures, not to be dragged into one by accident. He looked out. The small window. Mountains surrounded the city. The sun here was large and red. It painted the sky with colors he had never seen before. It should have been beautiful, but all he could feel was confusion. A soft knock came from the door. One of the guards stepped inside. "You are summoned by the council. Come now." Joran followed without protest. He was taken through stone halls, until he reached the same chamber where the sword had first been touched. The elders sat in a half-circle, their faces calm but firm. Kayla stood to the side, arms crossed. The High Elder spoke first. 3 days remain, outsider. Do you understand your choices? Joran nodded. I understand. But I did not mean to disrespect your people. I didn't know what the sword meant. The elder replied, Intent does not change the law. You touched the sword. You woke the bond. That cannot be undone. Kayla stepped forward. I do not want a mate who acts by accident. If he refuses the bond, let him fight. Let him face the right of ash. If he wins, he may go. If he loses, let the sword be buried again. Joran looked at her. Her voice was sharp, but her eyes showed something else. Pride, pain, maybe fear. He took a breath. I don't want to fight your people. I want peace, but I also won't be forced into something I don't understand. The High Elder leaned forward. You have time. Learn our ways. Then choose. But know this. If you refuse both paths, you will bring shame to our hall, and peace between our kinds may end. Joran was let out again. This time, instead of being locked in his room, he was allowed to walk the lower levels of the palace under watch. He visited the Hall of Records, where he learned about Vatrac's customs, battles, and heroes. He saw how honor guided every part of life here. Nothing was done without purpose. He also read about the Blade of Varn. It was said the sword had a core of living metal forged from a fallen star. Only one with a strong will could lift it. In the past 100 years, no one had done so. Not even Kayla. That night, Joran sat in the courtyard garden alone. He thought about everything. Back home, people would laugh at the idea of a sword choosing a mate. But here, it was law. And somehow, he had become part of that law. A figure stepped out of the shadows. Kayla walked toward him, silent and serious. I want to speak. Joran nodded. I'll listen. She sat on the stone bench across from him. You are not the warrior I expected. You are not even one of your own leaders. You are just a worker, a quiet man. Why did the sword choose you? I don't know, Joran said. I didn't feel anything special. I just picked it up because it looked strange. Kyla looked away. I trained for years to be strong enough to carry that sword. I was never able to lift it. And now it has chosen you. I cannot ignore that. But I also cannot accept it. Joran nodded. Maybe the sword chose me by mistake. Or maybe it saw something I don't understand. But I don't want to be your enemy. Kayla stood up. If you want peace, then prove it. Walk the path of flame. It is a trial of honor. You will not be forced to fight. But you will face danger. And you must walk it alone. What happens if I pass? You gain respect. You show that you are not just a mistake. Then maybe we can speak again. Joran stood up too. I'll do it. The next morning, the council met again. Kayla stood before them. I request the outsider walk the path of flame. The elders murmured in surprise. One of them asked, if he dies, the bond ends. Are you ready for that? Kayla answered, yes. Joran stood tall. I accept the trial. The path of flame was a cave deep in the mountains. Lava flowed under. Glass stones. Heat poured from the walls. Many warriors had failed this path. Few outsiders had even tried. Joran walked alone into the mouth of the cave. Behind him, Kayla watched with silent eyes. She held no hope, but a small part of her wanted to be surprised. Inside, Joran faced walls of fire, sudden drops, and strange gas that made his mind twist. He used what little training he had. He stayed calm, step by step. He pushed forward with only one thought. He did not want to be a mistake. He wanted to be seen. Hours passed. Then a guard shouted from the mouth of the cave, he's coming out. Kayla rushed forward. Joran walked out, burned and tired, but alive. He held a small flame crystal in his hand, proof he had reached the heart of the path. The crowd of Vatrax let out a sound of respect. Kayla looked at him, unsure what to say. For the first time, she saw more than a stranger. She saw a man who had chosen honor. The news spread quickly across the Vatrax city. The human had survived the path of flame. Many Vatrax warriors had failed where he succeeded. Even those who did not respect humans now spoke his name with interest. Some were surprised. Others were angry. A few were curious. None could ignore him now. Joran sat in a healing chamber. A thick balm covered the burns on his arms. He had bruises on his legs and cuts on his hands. But he was alive. And more than that, he had earned something. Rare in Vatrax society, respect. Kayla entered the chamber quietly. She stood beside him without speaking at first. Joran looked up. I didn't know fire could be that hot, he said with a weak smile. Kayla gave a short nod. Most do not return. You walk through it without training. That takes more than strength. Joran looked at her, still unsure of where he stood. Does this change anything between us? Kayla looked at the flame crystal he had brought back. She placed it on the table. It means you are not just a fool with fast hands. It means you understand what it means to be tested. But the bond remains. The choice is still before us. I don't want to run from your people, but I also don't want to be tied to you unless you choose it freely. Kayla stared at him. I do not make choices with a weak heart. You have earned time. Use it well. That night, the city held a quiet ceremony to honor the human's survival. Joran was given a simple necklace made of stone and metal. It was not a title or a medal, but it meant he had stepped onto the path of honor. While Joran rested, something dark moved behind the scenes. Deep inside a nearby canyon, a secret meeting took place. A group of Vatrax stood in the shadows. They wore no house colors. Their faces were hidden. The sword has awakened, said one of them. It has chosen "A human. That is a stain on our bloodline," said another. A tall warrior stepped forward. His armor was old but strong. His voice was cold. "The blade belongs to the Varn line. If the daughter will not defend her legacy, we will take it for ourselves." "What? Of the human he will fall, and the sword will return to the hand of the strong." The next day, Joran walked through the city with a guide named Darek, a Vatrax who had started to respect him after the trial. Darek spoke while leading Joran through a stone bridge. "Not all are happy with what you did. Some think the sword chose wrongly. Be careful where you walk." "I didn't ask for any of this," said Joran. "True, but you carry it now. That changes everything." They visited the Tower of Symbols, where old weapons were kept and studied. Joran wanted to learn more about the blade he had touched. A scholar showed him an old scroll. "This sword is not just a weapon," the scholar explained. "It holds the memory of battle. It binds itself to a soul it sees as worthy. Not for strength alone, but for balance between courage and peace." "Then why did it choose me?" Joran asked. "Perhaps it saw your heart before you knew its weight." Meanwhile, Kayla met with the council. One elder stood and spoke with concern. "You allowed the outsider to take the trial. Now your name is being tied to his. Do you accept this path?" Kayla answered with a calm voice. "I did not ask for this bond, but I will not break it with pride. He has proven he is not a joke." "That means something," another elder asked. "Do you see him as your mate?" Kayla looked out the window before answering. "I do not know yet, but I no longer see him as a mistake." That evening, while Joran sat near the outer wall, watching the red sun set, a sound broke the quiet. A figure climbed over the wall with silent steps. Then another. In moments, 6 armed Vatrax were in the courtyard. They moved fast and low. Joran saw them too late. One of them rushed forward with a shock blade. Joran dodged, but the second attacker caught him in the side. He rolled away and grabbed a metal staff used for training. He fought back with quick moves, using his smaller size to avoid the heavy swings. One attacker lunged. Joran knocked him back with a hard strike. Another slashed at his leg. Pain shot through him, but he stayed on his feet. Suddenly, a loud cry rang out. Kayla arrived, sword drawn, moving like fire. She struck with skill and force. 2 attackers fell. The others tried to escape, but city guards surrounded them. The leader was taken down by Kayla's blade. Joran leaned against a wall, breathing hard. "You came fast," he said. "I watched from the tower," she replied. "I saw them before they struck." Joran nodded. "Good thing you did." Kayla looked at his wound. "You're hurt." "I've been worse. Not by much, but still." She helped him walk to the healer's house. The guards took the attackers. "Away!" One of them shouted before being dragged off. "The blade does not belong to a human. It belongs to Vatrax's blood." Kayla turned her head. "The blade has chosen. If you cannot accept that, then your fight is not with him. It is with the law." The healer patched Joran's leg and gave him herbs for the pain. As Kayla prepared to leave, Joran looked at her. "Thank you for saving me." Kayla paused. "Next time, stay near the guards. I'll try." She walked out without another word, but her steps were slower than before. That night, Joran stared at the sword resting in the main hall. It was still there, silent and cold. But something inside him had changed. He no longer felt like a visitor. He felt like someone who had stepped into a storm that had no clear end. Rain fell over the stone city of Vatrax Prime. It came like sheets of smoke, heavy and cold. Most warriors stayed indoors during the rain, as it often marked quiet hours in the city. But this night was not quiet. Inside the great hall, guards patrolled slowly, their boots echoing on the stone floor. At the center of the hall, on the sacred stand, rested the blade of Varn. The same blade that had chosen Joran. The same blade that had caused a storm between 2 worlds. But now, something moved in the shadows. A dark figure crept along the upper beams of the hall. It wore a black cloak and gloves. Silent as mist, it lowered itself from the roof. With careful hands, it unlocked the case around the sword. The guard near the gate turned for only a second. That was enough. The blade was lifted. The figure vanished. Through a hidden door in the back wall. The alarm stayed silent. No one noticed until dawn. Joren woke to the sound of heavy footsteps. Darek, the Vatrax guard who had guided him before, burst into his room. "The sword is gone." Joren stood at once. "What do you mean, gone?" "It was stolen during the night. The guards found no sign of entry. Only the empty stand remains." "Doe. They think I took it." Darek gave him a sharp look. "Some already do." Joren grabbed his gear and followed Darek to the great hall. A crowd had formed. Kayla stood in front of the empty stand, her face like stone. Elders whispered behind her. Warriors growled with anger. When Joren entered, silence followed him. One council elder pointed at him. "You are the last one chosen by the blade. Now it is gone. Can you explain this?" Joren stepped forward. "I didn't take it, I swear. I would never dishonor your people." Another elder spoke. "Then help us find it. You are tied to the blade. If you are truly worthy, you must bring it back." Kayla turned to him. "We will go together. If the sword is lost forever, our bond breaks with shame. I will not let that happen." They left the city that afternoon. Kayla, Joren, and Darek rode swift lizard-like beasts through the narrow mountain paths. The sky remained gray, and the trail was wet and hard to follow. Darek found strange footprints near the river crossing. One set of boots, heavy and wide, not from any known warrior. He knelt beside them and touched the mud. This was made only a few hours ago. Whoever took the sword passed through here. Kayla looked at the prints. This path leads to the ruins of Thornlight. Old warriors used to train there, but no one goes near it now. The ground is unstable. They pressed forward. Joren's leg still ached from the last battle, but he said nothing. He knew this journey mattered more than pain. He had to prove his heart again. By nightfall, they reached the ruins. Broken towers and stone arches stood like the bones of giants. The air was cold. The ground smelled of ash and dust. Kayla raised her hand. "Wait, I hear something." They moved behind a fallen wall. In the center of the ruins, a campfire burned low. Beside it, a tall Vatrax warrior sat polishing the blade of Varn. His armor was deep black, marked with old war symbols. His face was scarred. Darek whispered, "That is Voran. He served under General Varn long ago. He disappeared after the last war." Kayla's eyes narrowed. "He was once loyal. Now he steals the weapon of our house." Joren looked at her. "Do we attack him now?" Kayla shook her head. "Not yet. We must hear what he wants." Voran stood and raised the sword into the firelight. "This blade does not belong to a human," he said aloud. "It belongs to the blood of Vatrax. I served beside Varn. I watched him fall. This sword was meant to stay in strong hands." Kayla stepped out from behind the wall. "You betray his name by stealing it." Voran turned slowly. "You bring the outsider with you." "You call this honor?" Kayla walked closer. "I do not know what he is yet, but I know what you are. A coward hiding in old ruins, afraid of a world that is changing." Voran raised the blade. "Then let the blade decide." Kayla drew her own weapon. She and Voran clashed with powerful strikes. Sparks lit the dark ruins. Their swords moved fast. Each strike carried weight and meaning. Joren watched, torn between staying out and stepping in. Darek held him back. This is her fight. She must face him alone. Kayla fought with skill, but Voran was older and more experienced. He knocked her blade aside and raised the sword high. Joren broke free from Darek's grip and rushed forward. He picked up a broken staff from the ground and blocked the next strike. Voran looked surprised. You dare touch this fight? Joran stood firm. I don't care about rules anymore. I won't. Let her fall. Voran swung hard, but Joran ducked and hit him in the leg. Kayla recovered her sword and joined him. Together, they fought side by side. Joran distracted. Kayla struck. They moved like two parts of one plan. Finally, Kayla disarmed Voran and knocked him to the ground. The sword fell. Joran picked it up. This time, it glowed faintly. A hum filled the air. The blade accepted his grip once more. Kayla looked at him, breathing hard. The sword knows. They tied Voran and began the ride back to the city. This time, Joran did not feel like an outsider. He had stood in battle beside Kayla. He had earned her trust again, and now, with the sword safe in his hands, he rode as part of something greater. The city of Vatrax Prime was alive with tension. News of the sword's return spread quickly. Some cheered for Kayla and Joran. Others whispered in dark corners. The traitor Voran was locked behind stone bars, but many wondered if others planned to claim the blade of Varn. Joran stood on the balcony of the palace. He held the sword carefully. It felt warm in his hands, alive with power. He looked at Kayla walking toward him. Her armor was worn but strong. Her eyes held a new respect. We cannot lower our guard, Kayla said quietly. Voran was not alone. Joran nodded. Who else wants the sword? Kayla shook her head. Enemies from within and outside our lands? Some want the blade to start wars. Others want to use its power for themselves. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the palace. Guards ran past them, shouting warnings. The traitor's allies attack! Joran and Kayla ran to the great hall. Outside, a group of armored warriors stormed the gates. They fought with speed and skill. Their weapons were sharp and strange. Unlike the usual Vatrax arms, Kayla raised the sword high. For Varn! Her voice rang out, strong and clear. Joran followed, holding the sword beside her. Together, they charged at the attackers. The battle was fierce. The attackers moved with the precision of soldiers trained to kill. Joran dodged a blade and swung the sword. It felt as if the weapon knew what to do, guiding his moves. Sparks flew. As steel met steel, Kayla fought like a whirlwind, her blade flashing in the sunlight. She blocked attacks and struck back hard. She protected Joran when he was low on breath. They fought as one. One attacker moved behind Kayla, aiming to strike her back. Joran saw it and pushed the man aside. Kayla nodded, silently thanking him. The battle continued near the palace walls. More guards joined the fight. The attackers shouted commands in a foreign tongue. It was clear this was a planned assault. Joran felt something change inside the sword. A soft glow pulsed along its blade. He focused, and the sword seemed to hum in his hands. It was not just a weapon, but a living force. Suddenly, Joran swung the sword toward a heavy attacker. The blade cut through his armor like light through mist. The man fell, stunned. Kayla smiled briefly. You have learned much. Joran breathed hard. I am trying. The attackers began to retreat. Their leader, a large figure in dark armor, shouted orders to fall back. The city guards pursued, but the enemy escaped into the hills. Kayla wiped sweat from her forehead. This is not over. They will return. Joran looked at her. We must be ready, not just with swords, but with strength and trust. Kayla nodded. You have become part of Vatrax now, not by law only, but by action. That night, the council gathered once more. Kayla spoke with calm authority. The blade has chosen a new bearer. He has proven himself in trial and battle. I ask the council to accept Joran as my mate by choice, not by force. The elders looked around, surprised by her words. One elder spoke slowly. This is the first time in many cycles a bearer of the blade has been chosen by will, not law. Another elder nodded. Perhaps it is time for our customs to change. The council voted quietly but clearly. The bond would no longer be forced. The sword would choose, but the heart would decide. Joren and Kayla stood together as the decision was announced. The crowd cheered, and for the first time, humans and Vatrax shared a moment of hope. In the days that followed, Joren trained harder. Kayla taught him about the history of her people, their battles, and their hopes. Joren shared stories of Earth, its struggles, and its dreams. Together they planned for the future, a future where two worlds could stand as one. The days after the Council's decision were filled with hope and new challenges. Joren and Kayla walked side by side through the city streets. People looked at them with curiosity. Some smiled, others whispered quietly. The idea of a human and a Vatrax warrior bound by choice was new and strange. Kayla held the blade of Varn carefully. The sword was no longer just a symbol of war. It had become a sign of change. Joren felt its power grow, not only in battle but in the hearts of those around them. One morning, Joren sat with Kayla in a quiet garden. The sun shone softly through the trees. Birds sang strange songs. Joren looked at Kayla. "I want to understand your people better. Not just the fights, but the way you live. What you hope for." Kayla smiled gently. "Our people have lived by honor for many cycles. But honor is not just fighting. It is respect, truth, and courage. We fight to protect, not to conquer." Joren nodded. "That is different from what I thought. On Earth, many see war as power. Here it seems more like duty," Kayla agreed. "Duty is the path of a warrior, but we also value peace. That is why the sword chose you. You carry both." Their conversation was interrupted by a messenger. He bowed deeply. "The Council requests your presence. There is news from the border." Kayla and Joren stood quickly. They walked through the palace halls, the sword resting at Kayla's side. At the council chamber, elders awaited them. One elder spoke. "Scouts have reported an increase in activity from the Xerac clans near the eastern border. They threaten raids on our villages." Kayla frowned. "The Xerac have always been fierce. But this growing boldness is new." Joren asked. "What will you do?" Kayla looked at the sword. "We will prepare to defend, but I want you to come with me. Your knowledge may help." Joren nodded. "I will do whatever I can." Over the next days, Kayla trained with Joren. She showed him how to move with the sword, how to read the enemy's steps. Joren shared Earth tactics and technology ideas. Their bond grew stronger, not just as warriors, but as partners. Before they left, Kayla spoke quietly. "The sword is not just a weapon. It is a promise. We must keep that promise together." Joren looked into her eyes. "I will stand by you, not because of law, but because I choose to." They rode to the border on powerful beasts. The land changed from stone cities to wild forests. The air was cooler. The silence was heavy. At the edge of the forest, scouts met them. One spoke urgently. "The Xerac are gathering near the ruins of Kalith. They plan to attack soon." Kayla tightened her grip on the sword. "We will meet them before they reach the villages." The battle that followed was fierce. The Xerac warriors were skilled and fast. But Kayla and Joren fought with the strength of their bond. Joren used his new knowledge to help the Vatrax soldiers move with better tactics. In the heat of the fight, Kayla was surrounded. Joren rushed to her side, holding the blade of Varn high. The sword glowed brighter than ever. It seemed to feed on their courage. Together, they fought off the attackers. When the battle ended, the Xerac retreated into the forest. The villages were safe. Back at the camp, Kayla looked at Joren. "You have changed many things here. You bring hope," Joren smiled. "And you have shown me a new way to fight, one with honor and heart." That night by the fire, Kayla made a choice. She stepped close to Joren. "I will marry you, not because the law says so, but because I want to. You have earned your place by your actions and your heart." Joren felt a warmth he had never known. I will marry you, Kayla. Together, we will face whatever comes. Far from the fire, in the shadows, eyes watched them. The path was not safe, but for now a new bond was forged, a bond of choice and respect. The day of the wedding arrived with bright sunlight. The city of Vatrax Prime was decorated with flags and flowers. People from all over the planet gathered in the grand hall. The air was full of hope and excitement. Joren stood beside Kayla. He wore a simple but proud outfit. Kayla wore her warrior armor, polished and shining. The blade of Varn rested in a special place beside them. It was no longer just a weapon. It was a symbol of their bond. The High Elder spoke to the crowd. His voice was calm but full of meaning. Today we witness a union not by old law but by choice and respect. Two souls from different worlds stand together to build a new future. Kayla looked at Joren. She smiled softly. We are not just joining by custom. We join as partners. We join to protect both our peoples. Joren took her hand. I am proud to stand with Kayla. Together we will face any challenge. The ceremony was simple, but powerful. Songs filled the hall. Vatrax warriors and humans alike cheered. Many had doubted such a union was possible, but today, they saw it was real. After the ceremony, the celebrations continued. Joren and Kayla walked through the crowd, shaking hands and sharing stories. The people spoke of hope for peace and strength in unity. In the weeks that followed, Joren and Kayla worked hard. They trained together. They learned from each other. Joren showed Kayla new technology from Earth. Kayla taught Joren the ways of Vatrax battle and honor. They planned missions to protect both their worlds. They spoke to leaders of other planets. The news of their union spread across the stars. Many saw it as a sign that old divisions could end. One evening, Joren and Kayla stood on the balcony, looking at the twin moons of Vatrax. Do you think we can change the future? Joren asked. Kayla smiled. We already have. The sword chose us for a reason. It is not just a weapon. It is a promise of hope. Suddenly, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A new threat was rising on the far edge of the galaxy. Aliens who did not want peace were gathering forces. Kayla nodded. Our work is not done, but we face it together. Joren squeezed her hand. Together. The Sword of Two Worlds was not just a story. It was a new beginning. A beginning where humans and aliens could stand as one, where courage and honor crossed the stars. As the twin moons shone bright, Joren and Kayla prepared for the future. A future where the greatest battles were fought not by weapons alone, but by trust and unity.